Can you guys hear me? Yeah. All right. Good evening, San Francisco Democrats. How's everyone doing today? Well, thank you very much for being here tonight. My name is David Campos. I'm the chair of the San Francisco Democratic Party, and I'm proud to say that I'm a proud San Francisco Democrat. We have all the candidates that are agreed to participate in the forum. I see London Breed here. When we set up the meeting, the debate back in February, we found a time that every candidate confirmed they could be here. And that was today, March 8th. We were informed a couple of days ago that President Breed would not be able to stay here for the whole forum. And so, we would ask once again if you would reconsider. We have a chair for you. We would love to hear from you. Wouldn't we like to hear from every candidate? So I would ask, if you could stay as long as you possibly can. Okay. So, you can grab a chair. And I would ask the candidates, stay for the whole thing. It's the San Francisco Democratic Party. There are 250,000 San Francisco Democrats that want to hear from all of you. I think the San Francisco Democratic Party, when it comes to this endorsement, is as important an endorsement. Maybe you guys can scoot over a little bit. There is room for everyone in the San Francisco Democratic Party. So, again, the San Francisco Democratic Party, I believe, as a San Francisco Democrat, that, and I'll be honest, I think that at times the Democratic Party has not been as relevant as it needs to be. And I would say that there are times, from my own perspective, and I speak as an individual, that the Democratic Party, in my view, has not been true to the values and principles that make us Democrats, not Republicans. And one of the things that we have tried to do in the San Francisco Democratic Party is to bring the party back to those roots. And we have embraced this concept of being a San Francisco Democrat because the Fox News and the Republicans use that as a negative, and we actually think it's a positive to be a San Francisco Democrat and all the values that come with that. And so this forum is really about giving you, registered Democrats in San Francisco, an opportunity to hear from these candidates. And today, to moderate this debate is someone that I've had the opportunity to get to know and who is a pretty remarkable individual. Her name is Maria Leticia Gomez. Maria Leticia was born in Rosario, Argentina. She grew up in Mexico City and in Washington, D.C. She earned a double degree in French literature and sociology. That's an interesting combination, by the way. From the University of Maryland, and a master's degree in sociology from George Washington University. For her master's thesis, Maria Leticia lived among the Zapatistas in the rainforest in Chiapas, in Mexico, where she discovered her passion for journalism. And if you are a Spanish-speaking person in the Bay Area, for more than 10 years, she has been the anchor person for the local news program for Univision. She has been the person that anyone who is a Spanish speaker in the entire 9-county Bay Area turns to for the news. And I think that if you speak to anyone who speaks Spanish, they can tell you that they trust her. They don't trust anyone more than they do Maria Leticia. So I'm really honored that she has agreed for her city where she lives to be the moderator today. So if you can please join me in welcoming Maria Leticia. But before I do that, I do have a question for all the mayoral candidates. One of the things that we see in this mayoral debate at this campaign is that there is a lot of tension, a lot of division. But I'm hoping that one thing that we all can agree upon is the need to turn back the clock and to make sure that we take back the Congress away from the Republican Party.
Yes, yes.
So we are working as the San Francisco Democratic Party on a effort to turn the Congressional District 10 from a Republican district into a Democratic district. And we will be going in the next month or so to that district to campaign as San Francisco Democrats. Can I count on each one of your campaigns to send us some volunteers so that when we go into that district in the next few weeks, we can have that all of the Democratic mayoral candidates are united behind that effort? So with that, please welcome Maria Leticia Gomez.
Good evening. Two things. I'm here to keep the debate going, the conversation going, so whenever I say time's up, please, time's up. Another thing, English is my second language, so if I say anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me and I will ask the question again, second time in Spanish. Alright, we have the candidates in alphabetical order tonight. Angela Alioro, London Breed, Michelle Bravo, Jane Kim, Mark Leno, and Amy Farah Wise. I'm proud on this International Women's Day to see a robust women's representation at the table. Thank you all. Let's have 2 minutes each for a brief introduction remark, and we will just go from my left to my right. We're going to start then with Jane Kim. 2 minutes.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Jane Kim, and I have the honor of serving the city and county on the Board of Supervisors representing District 6, and I've also served on our Board of Education. And prior to serving in office, I worked as a community organizer for 6 years at Chinatown Community Development Center, and also as an attorney at Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Over the last 10 years, I have demonstrated my commitment to a progressive agenda that makes San Francisco a city for all of us. I'm proud to have worked to make San Francisco the only city in the country to make community college free for all of our residents. I am proud to have fought and negotiated more affordable and middle-income housing than any city legislator in the last 7 years. And I'm also proud to have been the author of the legislation to raise our minimum wage to $15 an hour, and also to fight for strong tenant protections for all of our residents. As mayor, I'm committed to continuing this work. We need to more greatly invest in our public institutions and infrastructure that can help regrow our middle class here in San Francisco and support our working class. We also need to make sure that we are investing in city services again. We need to make sure our streets are cleaner, that we're addressing mental health and substance abuse on our streets, and that we are also to improve the quality of life so that this can continue to be a sanctuary city that we are all incredibly proud of. I'm asking for your support this upcoming June in this mayor's race based on my track record over the last 10 years in fighting for our city, whether it is in housing or in education, or in other services that our city greatly needs. I'm also proud to have done a number of work around increasing mental health services for our most vulnerable residents on our street, opening a 24-hour medical respite shelter in the south of Market this past December, which is staffed by nurses, clinicians, and psychologists, so that we can help our sickest residents on our streets get to a place where they can get the services and resources that they need. Thank you very much, and my website is janekim.org.
Good evening, everyone. I am Mark Leno, a 40-year business owner, small business owner in San Francisco, who's served not only 4 years on the County Board of Supervisors, but also 6 years in the State Assembly and 8 years in the State Senate. In 1977, when I arrived here as a 25-year-old queer Jewish kid looking for a safe place to land, San Francisco took me in and provided me with some basic opportunities to rent an apartment, to start a small business, to work hard and succeed, opportunities that are in rare supply today. I'm running for mayor because it is time for a new direction at City Hall. Our crises of homelessness, housing affordability are out of control. And on June 5th, voters will have a clear choice between fundamental change and the status quo. We need a mayor who will think big, think differently, think regionally, reject cynicism, and demand results. Results like I accomplished when I was in Sacramento, raising California's minimum wage to $15 an hour, the only legislator to amend the Ellis Act to protect 12,000 of our most vulnerable housed who are in SROs now exempted from the Ellis Act. I brought back $120 million to save City College when it was in the depths of its accreditation crisis, and another $500 million to expedite the construction of 3,300 affordable housing units at Trans Bay, Mission Bay, and the Hunters Point shipyard. So if you are frustrated with the state of our city, like I am, and you want to shake shit up, please join me with your vote on June 5th. MarkLetto.com. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all for coming out tonight. These panels have been absolutely incredible, all of them. And I think there are like 30 more of them. But what's absolutely unbelievable, I think we have an agreement that, some of them enough's enough. But having said that, what's really wonderful is that 400 to 500 people, I mean, look how many, are there 200 people here? It's incredible how interested our city is in the politics of our city and in the Democratic Party, of course. I'm a former vice chair of the state Democratic Party. I was vice chair for 8 years under Phil Angelides and then John Burton. I'm a former legislator here in the city and county of San Francisco. I want to excuse the way Jane and I have to talk so fast because it's like impossible to get out our lives in 2 minutes, okay? So it's just ridiculous. So what I'm going to do is even it out throughout the evening and tell you things about me intermittently. So if I just burst out and say, I wrote the original sanctuary law, you'll know I'm just giving you a little bit about my background that I can't get in this 2 minutes. I also wrote the first needle exchange legislation, which was an exchange of needles, which is not happening today. Today, DPW is just giving needles and not exchanging the ones that would have saved lives if they take them back. That was a very serious piece of legislation that I did, and it's being abused, and that's extremely upsetting. I also banned cigarettes in the smoke place, the first one in the United States, first one in the world. I also did all of the federal medicines that they would not put on the ADAP list, which eventually led to the cocktail, which saved lives of people who are HIV and AIDS. As a matter of fact, Carol Migden came into my office and said, "What are you, gay or something? You're doing all this gay legislation." I said, "No, I'm not. I am doing people legislation. I care." My whole life has been about caring, and everything I've done. I've been the mother of 4, grandmother of 2 minutes, won the largest civil rights verdict trial in the nation. I'm a civil rights lawyer.
It's so important that we're coming together to select the next mayor of San Francisco, because the next mayor of San Francisco will be making a lot of decisions and leading the city in stabilizing our systems and our neighborhoods and our neighbors in crisis, and also developing a long-term plan so that we can aim ourselves towards becoming truly an epicenter of equity, or if we choose the wrong person, it might actually widen that gap more. And in terms of choosing the next person, let's understand that there's another election in 2019, in November. And that's why I have developed something that I'm calling the Mayor's Outcomes Tracker that has 12 categories and 40 measurable outcomes, because this next year is really a trial run for the following 4 years and potentially 8 years. And so we need measurable outcomes. It's not just about saying we're going to shake things up, you're going to feel different when I'm mayor. We need measurable strategic initiatives that we can put into play starting in June 2018. One of those things that we need to all unite on in this room and in this city is to ensure, speaking of stabilization, that stable housing And stable rent are needs for our workforce, for our tenants, for our families. Are you with me on that? And what does that mean? It means that we're gonna work together to get Costa-Hawkins repeal on the ballot for November, and we're gonna focus on making that a priority as a city to make sure that that passes. I'm gonna actually ask someone to come up and take this and put it around the room and just bring it back up when it's done. How many people in this room support Costa-Hawkins repeal? Raise your hand. Everybody here on the panel? So far, this is something that we can unite as a group of candidates on. Who you elect as your mayor matters. In 2011, we had a chance to go in one direction. We went in the other. If John Avalos had been mayor, we would have had a public bank. We would have had a totally different situation with Airbnb and TNCs. So let's choose wisely.
My name is London Reed. I was born and raised in San Francisco in the Western Addition community. After graduating from college, I returned home to my community where sadly there was a lot of hopelessness, a lot of gentrification, a lot of despair. I've worked my entire career on changing and saving lives in the community before I was even on the Board of Supervisors. I ran for the Board of Supervisors because I felt that there weren't enough people in leadership positions making good decisions for the people that I grew up with. My entire life has been committed to that. And when I became a member of the Board of Supervisors, the policy decisions and the work that I've done on the Board of Supervisors centered around trying to make changes for the better for the community and not doing this job in fear of losing it. San Francisco needs bold, fearless, creative leadership. Someone who is willing to take the kinds of risks that is going to change the issues that we care about the most. Our homeless challenges, our housing challenges, our public safety issues. We have a lot of work to do, and we can't be afraid to make those kinds of changes. Last year, when we discussed safe injection sites, no one really wanted to touch the issue. I know, I hear you coughing over there, David Campos. I know that you brought the issue to the attention of policymakers, and I took that issue and I developed a task force, and I made sure that people understood exactly what it could mean to change and save lives. I didn't just say we're going to open something. I went out there and launched a public education about why this would be important and why this would make a difference. Last year, 30% of San Franciscans said they supported safe injection sites. This year, 67% of San Franciscans support safe injection sites, and we're going to make that happen this year. And the point that I'm making is, we can't be afraid of the hard conversations. We can't be afraid to put together the right solutions that are going to help us get to where we want to get. We can talk about how we want to see a different city, but the only way we're going to make that happen is if we work together to accomplish that goal, and we have a bold and fearless leader to do it. Thank you.
Good evening. If anybody else wants to get up and stretch, be my guest. I'm a holistic health practitioner, 6th generation, Northern Californian. And this is my first anything in terms of getting into a mayoral run or anything like this. Probably not going to take up the 2 minutes. I'm going to do a Twitter on that one. So in terms of what I'm here to do, I was inspired last year because of all the taser stuff. Is everyone familiar with tasers and all of that and what's happening and how many of the folks here tonight either are for or against them? I want you to know I am firmly opposed to tasers. They are dangerous weapons. They cause heart palpitations, cardiac arrhythmia, heart attacks, and can kill our most vulnerable, our elderly and such. So no tasers, and especially no tasers for SFPD. Are you with me on this? I have 3 main points that I'm going to stick to for the most part. Obviously, I'll be courteous and answer the questions that I'm asked. But the 3 main points are on my website, michellebravo.org. And these 3 main points are really about grassroots. Hey, we've got excrement and we've got urine, and that stuff needs to be cleaned up. You know, not just for people who live here, but also for our tourism. Our tourism is down. It affects everyone if we cannot get the streets cleaner, if we cannot do something to address our transient situation. I refuse to call them homeless. Not all of them are homeless. Some of them have a home, but they don't want to go back to them. Some of them don't even, they're checked out of their bodies. They need medical help. And I have some ideas. They may be a little controversial or a lot controversial, but they're sincere and they're from the heart. As a holistic health practitioner, working within the medical community for over 12 years, that is where I speak from in whatever I do. Thank you so much.
At the gubernatorial debate a few weeks ago, we had a hard time finding a coin to toss to determine who would go first. Today I came prepared. I have 2 dice. I need a volunteer from the audience. Anyone please come up. And you will roll the dice, not my husband. Anyone, please, come on up.
Don't be shy.
Whoever gets here faster. Because we are on a time limit. So choose one of the 2. And before you roll it, gonna be the one from left, from the viewer's perspective. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whoever's number comes up, that person gets to go. 5. Number 5. Okay, so the first question will go to Mark Leno. Thank you so much. And then we're going to move to your left. Should we go to your right so that people in San Francisco prefer looking at
You speaking to the mic.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we'll go to your right so people can see things moving to the left. How about that? No pun intended. All right, the first question, and you have 2 minutes for these questions. 2 minutes each. Do you think the rapid growth San Francisco experienced has been good for the city in terms of social justice and quality of life for all its residents?
So the figures are fairly staggering. Over 100,000 new San Franciscans in the past 20 years, with another projected 100,000 in the next 20 years. And this has caused great success for some, as we brought in a lot of new industry, created a lot of new industry, and also with a shadow side. So many hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced over the same time period. So the question is a mixed one, clearly depending upon whether you've benefited or not. The real question is, how do we manage this change? How can we afford the opportunity for oftentimes young people to come into the city and strike their own gold and make a life for themselves, and at the same time protect those who are here and protect the character and the quality of our neighborhoods. So we have very complex and hopefully community engaged planning processes. This area here is part of the Octavia Market Plan, and with a citizens advisory group there has been in place a lot of participation so that we can try to get it as right as possible. That means a good jobs housing balance along with open space and transit to serve the greater capacity needs of a growing population, as well as the services that are necessary and provided by the city. So again, moving forward, it really is about managing the change that we best can do. And this is where I'm talking about a new direction, because in the past so many years, we've seen a much greater focus on those who are holding the reins of power, influenced by a lot of special interest money, with less focus on those who are in real struggle and need of assistance just to hang on to what they've got. So that is why I've been working so to limit the use of the Ellis Act so that we can keep people in place and not displaced.
Thank you.
Rapid growth that has happened in the last 5 to 6 years without any planning. How can you let Twitter, Facebook, Salesforce, massive companies come to town without a plan? Who's looking at the infrastructure? Who's looking at the streets? Who's looking at where people are going to live? Affordable housing. I was born and raised in San Francisco. My father and my grandmother were born and raised in San Francisco. I would like my children and my grandchildren to be able to live in San Francisco. It isn't easy. So when large companies come to town, you have to have a master plan. You have to have a city plan. And that extends to all of the infrastructure that you need in order to accommodate what that inflow is going to do. Let me give you Uber for an example. Uber, Lyft, Chariot. I know everybody loves it. I get booed on this one once in a while, but 60,000 cars have come to town. 60 to 70,000 cars. They're coming into the city and county of San Francisco to do business, right? I have a little law firm, civil rights law firm. I pay a business tax. Why doesn't Lyft, Uber, and Chariot pay a business tax? I mean, seriously, one of the richest cities in the world, and all of our poor people sleeping on the streets. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. We need to take care of the poor living on our streets, which I'll tell you all about my homeless plan, which worked for 8 years before it got dropped. But we need to take care of the poor and the sick in our families before we're taking care of the Ubers, the Lyfts, and the Chariots who get a free ride.
I am actually one of those low-income tenants who's been displaced twice since 2012, and I hung on because there were times when it felt like the city wanted to spit me out, but I said, no way, I've grown roots here, and this is my city, and so I fought to stay here. I'm so happy to be able to be here today, running for mayor of San Francisco to help lead it into this direction of an epicenter of equity. So how many people were in the Bay Area in the late 90s during the first tech displacement boom 1.0? So why is it that city leadership, after the global financial collapse, didn't have the foresight to understand that when we grew jobs in the tech industry in the late 90s without thinking about displacement and making sure it was inclusive growth, why did we go this direction of changing the taxing system and changing and having a Twitter tax break in a way that's going to benefit who? The banks, the corporations, and the property owners on market who had their rates go up 80% have never been doing better. But what about the people, right? So I'm here for the people, and I want to say everybody should be very concerned about this central SOMA plan that sounds like tech displacement boom 3.0. Because it has a jobs to housing ratio of something like modest estimates 4-to-1 and up to 7-to-1. So it's so important that we have someone who in this next year is truly focused on a stabilization plan for people who are in crisis. I am the only person on this stage right now that can guarantee you that if I become mayor, I've been working 2 years on piloting and developing a plan to stabilize our encampment crisis. Because I say that I grew up in the 80s before Ronald Reagan was governor before I was born, and then he was president while I was a kid. And I'm going to say, time is up. We can't be blaming Reagan for the things that are happening in our city and state and country anymore. This is our generation, and we need to become the leaders that we've been waiting for.
Thank you. Since 2010, San Francisco has created 1 unit of housing for every 8 jobs. And the problem with that is what we're experiencing right now, our housing crisis, where people who are moving to San Francisco for these job opportunities are displacing long-term residents. We have work to do in terms of planning and making sure that we are doing everything we can to build more housing and build more housing for all San Franciscans. The problem that we've had in this city over the years is allowing 1960s housing policies to continue to dictate how we address affordable housing throughout San Francisco. It's why I work so hard with my colleagues to change the inclusionary housing laws so that moderate middle-income residents can actually qualify for affordable housing in San Francisco. It's really sad that laborers and janitors and people who make this city work, they make a little bit too much to qualify for affordable housing, but not enough to afford market rate housing. Where's the missing middle? Where's the long-term strategic plan to make sure that we don't continue to lose people in this city? And I have watched it happen in my neighborhood. I have watched as folks who I grew up with were moved out of San Francisco. I have watched as, still now it's happening in our city, and everyone wants to point the blame at one particular individual. We're all in this together. We need the kind of leader that's not going to point the finger, but is going to roll up their sleeves and work together to try and address this issue so that we see results and not just hear complaints. I'm your person for that.
points is infrastructure before increased density. What this means is, at least in my mind, is I don't think anyone's thinking about the next big earthquake. Who was here for the '89 earthquake? Raise your hand. Yeah. Interesting. Nobody's really thinking about that. We're just thinking new housing, let's bring them in, let's build. San Francisco right now has no requirements for where first responders live. So if they live over in in San Rafael, or if they live over in Oakland or whatever, and something happens to the bridge, remember the Bay Bridge and had a little problem, they won't be able to get to us, people who live here. That's a problem, don't you think? I mean, I think. Again, only about 27% of the SFPD and about 33% of the SFFD actually live in San Francisco. Okay, that's a pretty small percentage. Salary estimates for teachers, public school teachers is about $65,000 a year. They can't really afford to live here. So we need to do something. I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. My husband and I, as it says on my video on my website, michellebravo.org, we were able to purchase our home in District 10 with my veterans benefits. I would like to see something similar for teachers, for police, for fire department. We need these folks here who, they're so important to our community, and most of them don't even live here. So they get disconnected, and this is why they want things like tasers, okay? That's what I see. Who is with me on that? Because back in Antioch or some of these smaller towns, they use these things. San Francisco values are only known, typically, when you live in San Francisco. If these folks can't afford to live here, of course they're going to be for things that are in their communities that they're living in. Makes sense to me. So, again, I would like to incentivize public service workers with some kind of low-interest home loan or something that they can do to bring them back in.
Time's up.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
I talked about this a lot, but San Francisco is in a very unique position in our nation, which is that we are a fairly liberal city, but we're also a wealthy city. And over the last 5 years, the city has generated a lot of wealth, a lot of jobs, but what we've also seen is the same old problems, a growing income gap. In fact, the fastest growing income gap between the rich and the poor in the country, according to the Brookings Institute, and the same problem of stagnating wages. There's a number of things that I think San Francisco can be, and one is we can be a beacon for the rest of the nation and buck the trend that we've seen over the last 40 years where government has decided to divest from the very institutions that have allowed this country at one point to grow a middle class and support a working class. We used to be in the business of building housing. This federal government used to actually have a larger budget from HUD than the budget for Department of Defense. And HUD built over close to 6,000 units of publicly subsidized housing just here in the city and county of San Francisco between 1940 and 1980. And yes, I will blame Reagan, but I will also blame Bush and Clinton, who then cut HUD's budget by 50% between 1980 and 2002. And since 1980, the government has only built 1,000 units of publicly subsidized housing. And what happened across the country? Homelessness as a national urban phenomenon grew as HUD funding got cut. We here in San Francisco, with this growing wealth, can ask our employers that are doing very well here in San Francisco to give back a little bit of their value and their profits back to the infrastructure that can help support our working middle class again. And in 2016, I did exactly that with Proposition W, an ultra-luxury real estate transfer tax that made San Francisco the only city in the country to make community college free again for all of our residents. And we know that the average job available for a city college graduate is $11,000 more than for the same individual with a high school diploma. So not only do we need to build more affordable housing, which I have been a leader of on the Board of Supervisors, we also need to invest in the social infrastructure and institutions that help support our working middle class. I have an initiative on the ballot this upcoming June to make childcare and early childhood education affordable for every family in San Francisco. And I'm doing that to grow our social compact with our residents and be an example for the country.
At the gubernatorial debate, Villaraigosa got a little angry at me and a couple of questions, but he no more comment me, so I'm not sure what's going on. If you want to space, to make more room for yourself, there's one last person.
No, I think you ought to leave London's chair there.
Okay. There you go. So now, The next question, Angela Abiolo will have the answer. Who is the first one to answer? And the question says,
What?
you're going to be the first one to answer this question. It says the following: chronic homelessness is well observed on the streets of San Francisco. You just mentioned it's a disaster. A disaster that politicians have long used as a platform. What groundbreaking policies would you push that have not been tried before?
Okay. I wouldn't use anything that hasn't been tried before. I would use what we tried before in 2004 and 2004 to 2011 that housed over 11,000 people. 4,332 of them chronic, which means they've lived on the streets for more than 4 to 6 years with triple diagnosis. We moved them into a unit that was permanent supportive housing. And the lack of recidivism of those specific 4,000 units plus is 94%. That means today, if we go over to 2 or 3 of the buildings that are south of Market that we did, and one that's over in Richmond, you will see that the same people we put there in 2005, 6, and 7 are still there. Why? Because it's permanent, it's supportive with medical care, and it's housing. So all of these programs where we put our homeless people into like mental health program, and then they end in 6 months, and then you put them back out into the Tenderloin or back out into the streets, period, and it starts all over. It starts all over. You keep doing that to me.
I didn't try to use the microphone.
I note that I did not do that.
Try to speak on the microphones, please, because I think this is being streamed live on Facebook Live, so it's through the sound system. So just put it in your ears and face in your direction. There you go.
I'm pretty loud. Even sick, I'm pretty loud. Okay, having said that, our new plan is called Rapid Plan, which means taking people off the street immediately, and within 48 hours having them into, there's a triage that goes on with homelessness. All homeless people are not the same at all. And the explosion of homelessness and the explosion of tents, tent cities, that has occurred in the last 5 or 6 years needs an immediate answer. Believe me, they'll hear me on the whatever. But on this very, very serious topic, that by the way is one of the main reasons I'm running for mayor of San Francisco, is to house the poor in our city, which I said was a disgrace. It's a moral disgrace. So the rapid plan is to house them within 48 hours, put them into, from the 48 hours, into something like navigational centers, but fix the navigational centers so that they are not a dead end. Right now they're 120 days and you're out. No, they have to be 120 days, move into transitional, and then permanent supportive housing, assuming you are not as mentally ill as you would need hospitalization. You know, to explain the homeless plan in 2 minutes is simply not fair to it.
Thanks.
I agree with Angela that we need permanent supportive housing, but if Angela becomes mayor, given what she said, we will still have thousands of people on our street for years, because we need an interim plan to stabilize folks, the thousands of people who don't have access to a toilet tonight. They don't have access to secure shelter or organization or a pathway or connection to that permanent supportive housing. Why'd you do that to me, Angela? So are you ready as a city to say that now we will say that the bottom rung that people can get to is not the street or a tent or living in an RV without any access to plumbing, right? That was what is going on today. The new bottom rung is going to be safe, organized spaces, and we can mobilize to stabilize 1,000 to 3,000 people over this next year, except nothing less. That is why you should vote for me in your first, second, or third choice, because I spent the last 2 years of my life actually living in poverty, dedicated to working with encampment residents, house neighbors, service workers. I've been working with SFPD, DPW, Department of Homelessness, Department of Public Health, HSA, all of those organizations, from the direct service worker up to the people at the top of those departments. I understand where the system is broken. I know how in the short term we can stabilize, and it will be joyful. It will be joyful. We will have a summer of not just love, but a summer of love and logic as we work together with encampment residents, which the city has refused to do over the last 2 years. I continue to put forward proposals. Jane Kim has received them, London Breed has received them, so has Angela, so has Mark. I have been trying to work with everyone on this. What you can do, no matter who your favorite candidate is say work with Amy to develop these transitional villages, stabilize this situation, because we live in the city of St. Francis.
Thank you.
So I actually agree with Amy in that we do need to come up with a plan that is going to allow the folks who are in tents and who don't feel or truly don't feel that they don't have a place to go or truly don't have a place to go. You know, my husband and I live in District 10, and what we can see, there's a lot of open space out there. So if people have tents, maybe, potentially, it's one of those 54 city-owned properties. I don't know. I don't know which properties those are. Nobody's really talked about them. But apparently, the city of San Francisco owns 54 parcels of land throughout the city. Why could we not set those up like a KOA campground? Who remembers KOA campground? Something like that for these folks, because they're already in tents. We put some outhouses or something out there and, you know, porta-johns, and basically make sure that they've got some access. We've got that traveling truck. What's the name of that truck? For
Pit stop.
The pit stop, thank you. Things like that to help them. And for our chronically mentally ill transients, I have a different idea. I propose a holistic health, mental health institution built here in San Francisco. And why holistic? Because I'm a holistic health practitioner. We can put something together that looks absolutely nothing. This is 2018. It will look absolutely nothing like the 1960s. Nothing like that. If we work together as a community, get input. Transparency for better community is what I'm about. So I would want to hear from every single one of you, what would that look like to have some kind of institute? If you don't like institution, institute. Some kind of holistic mental health and wellness institute for these chronically mentally ill people who are coming after people with hatchets, who are throwing coffee in the face of clients of mine, who are hurting, employees of dentists, some of my neighbors, breaking their hands because they want to steal backpacks. These are desperate people. They need help. Thank you.
I want to thank Michelle for bringing up the pit stops, because that was my initiative. We launched that in the Tenderloin as a response to our constituents who said that there are a high number of human feces on our streets. And after we initiated the first 3 pit stops in the Tenderloin, we saw a 60% reduction in steam cleaning requests in that neighborhood, and we saved 2,200 gallons of water a month during the drought. And we absolutely need to expand this program citywide. And in 2016, I asked the mayor to expand our pit stop program so that every single neighborhood has a pit stop. Everyone should have a dignified place to go, and no one should have to step over someone else's poo when they're walking to work and to school. We also need to expand our shower system. We can open our rec centers early in the morning before our families and seniors arrive, and allow people who are on our streets to shower, so we can support the hygiene needs of those that live on our streets. I actually stayed in one of our shelters, and in fact, I think I'm the only elected official in San Francisco that has stayed in a shelter. I went through the reservation system, and I ended up at Next Door Shelter in the Tenderloin in my district, and I learned a tremendous amount that night. First of all, people are far older and far sicker than I had realized, and I was one of the youngest people in the shelter. And in fact, the shelter was built for someone like me, someone who's able-bodied, mentally well, but down on my luck and needs a bed to stay for a couple of weeks, a couple of months while I get my feet back up. That is not who is coming to our shelter system today. We need to radically change our system to address the actual issues that are happening in our homeless population. So I worked and I fought to get full-time nurses in every single one of our shelters, which now exist, and I fought to open a 24-hour medical respite shelter, which is a homeless shelter but staffed by nurses, clinicians, and psychologists. So HOT team members and police officers actually have a place to take people to if they're sick. In fact, our shelters kick you out if you are too sick, because they don't want to be liable for you or what you may do to others. We must address mental health on our streets, and jails are not the solution to mental health and drug abuse. So we need to increase our shelters, and we have to build more supportive housing.
Thank you.
The one question I hear everywhere I go is, how did it get so bad? How did San Francisco let this situation get so out of control? We have upwards of 3,500 people on our street unsheltered every night. At the same time, we have about 1,000 available single-room occupancies, SROs, that we could, if we decided that this was a top priority, we would identify sufficient funds so that we could take 1,000 people nearly immediately and put them into SROs with supportive services that they will need to stay successful in their housing. And we have got to stop recycling those who are dealing with mental health and addiction issues through our criminal justice system. And the way to do that is through a mental health justice center where we can assess and diagnose and treat folks who are dealing with mental health issues and addiction issues. And then, rather than cycle them back to the street without a treatment plan and without any caseworkers, so they come back into our criminal justice system, as they come out of the mental health justice center, we would be able to make use of $100 million that I was able to access in Sacramento for the specific purpose of building permanent supportive housing for those with mental health issues. And that would create about 400 new units for that population alone. We've got about 1,000 people on a waiting list every night who want to get off the streets and into a shelter system. So if it's a priority, let's do it. And let's stop making excuses, and let's stop kicking the can down the road. This is not working for anybody. For those who are on the street and suffering, and for those of us who are lucky to have a home, it's not working for us, it's not working for our small business owners, and we can do better.
The first person to answer the next question will be Amy Weiss, and the question asks, with the shared or sharing economy being headquartered in San Francisco, what's their role in giving back to society, especially considering the amount of exploitation that is documented of workers by these companies?
Well, in an interesting twist, what Donald Trump and the Republicans have done at the national level can be twisted around to be a win for California and San Francisco, because they have lowered the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. And so now, joyfully, our corporations in California and in the region can give to building San Francisco and the region in California rather than sending their money to the military or the red states. That's a good thing, right? So joyfully, the corporations will start to contribute back. So let's just say that. Secondly, David Campos did some amazing things around Airbnb, where he proposed at the very onset, and that was when I was working, I founded an organization called Neighbors Developing Divisadero, and we came up with, as a community, the same types of common sense regulations that David put forward in 2015. So that could have happened. TNC regulations, I don't know if you know this, but someone who was working for Lyft ended up being, or for the CPUC, ended up being a lobbyist for Lyft. And so when those statewide regulations were happening, there was, and she actually got fined something like $60,000, but that's nothing, right? Because look what we got left with. We can't regulate Uber and Lyft in the way that we need to. And so it's so important for us now to be able to do what we can to work with the taxi drivers who were actually hurt so badly by these processes and the medallion system. And we need a North Star so that we can actually create a locally regulated platform that's pro-driver, pro-passenger, and pro-environment, because this isn't working for us right now. And all of the deliveries on the streets, I mean, with these robots that they have on the sidewalk, give me a break. Go and pick up your burrito. Right?
Thank you.
So regard to the sharing economy, I'm going to just go straight for the jugular. Uber and Lyft has brought a lot of convenience to San Francisco, but at a lot of cost. I mean, our streets are torn up. There's been and I'm going to speak on behalf of the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition. I've seen cyclists. Who's a cyclist here, please? Thank you. I'm guessing that you've all had an experience where you've almost slammed into one of these Ubers or Lyfts. I'd really like to just say, you know, enough is enough. We need to hold these folks responsible. They need to pay, you know, if they're going to play in San Francisco, you know, they're going to pick up drivers or, thank you, pick up passengers, excuse me. They need to pay that business tax, because I do. I'm a small business owner as well, just like Mr. Leno here. So, you know, I think it's time to hold miserable. I think maybe, you know, make them like the taxi. If they had a $250,000 taxi medallion, boy, they might kind of go away. I think I agree with Amy in that we probably need to look at the system and put in some different plan of some kind to make sure that, you know, everybody is treated fairly, whether it's a taxi, an Uber, a Lyft, or some other new thing that's coming down the pike. Thank you very much.
First of all, I think San Francisco needs to lead the way in being a model employer here in San Francisco and push our private employers who are creating jobs in San Francisco to be model employers as well. We need to move Silicon Valley away from W-9s and independent contractors into W-2s. They should hire their security guards, their engineers, and their janitorial staff to be full-time employees of those organizations instead of contracting out those jobs. Similarly, the city and county of San Francisco can do the same. I've always opposed contracting out. In fact, I'm the only candidate that has a track record of opposing contracting out public services during years of recessions and crises. And we need to ask our private employers to do the same. And if they're going to provide commuter shuttle buses for their engineers and programmers, they should also provide commuter shuttle buses for their cafeteria workers, security guards, and janitors who probably need a lot of work to do with our emerging technology, and we know that many of these apps and technology are all things that we use that have eased our lives. We also have to make sure that we ensure the benefits of these programs and also regulate the negative consequences. So whether it's been Airbnb or ride-hailing, I've stood strong on making sure that we have strong regulations on these companies. I strongly have advocated for, since day one in 2014 with Supervisor David Campos, on a hard cap on the number of nights for short-term rentals and extending the hotel tax to those that provide commercial use and tourist use in their residential rooms. We have tried to regulate ride-hailing companies. And by the way, I use these ride-hailing companies. I know they fulfill a need, but we should be paying the drivers real wages with real benefits, and we should be capping the number of these vehicles on our roads so they're not contributing more to congestion. I'm supporting a proposal that Supervisor Peskin has put forward. It is a gig economy gross receipts tax on ride-hailing companies to ask them to pay their fair share of their profits to invest in transportation and other infrastructure that they use to benefit and profit from our streets.
Time's up.
And we can continue to work with these companies.
Thank you.
The technology sector, just like any other business sector, needs to pay its fair share, play by the rules, and obey the laws. And I'm going to also invoke the name of David Campos, who put forward some very thoughtful and reasonable amendments to the Airbnb legislation. Keep in mind, the business model was illegal when it started. It was illegal to rent a room for fewer than 30 days in San Francisco. So the board made it legal, but there was no way to enforce it. So there was an amendment to suggest and require that the platform, once we made it a law that hosts had to register with the city, that the platform couldn't allow anyone without registration onto that platform. They resisted and said they were not the police, but there was no way otherwise to enforce our laws. Now, after they sued the city, they came into compliance finally. The same with the collection of the taxes. And so, play by the rules, obey the law, we'll all get along a lot better. Additionally, there's a piece of legislation that passed in New York City called the Gig Economy Bill of Rights. And I think we should do something similar here in San Francisco. So those who are in the gig economy can make sure that they get paid within a certain amount of time. If they don't get paid, they'd have recourse and a private right of action to get into court so that they can get paid. Additionally, paying fair share. As Amy mentioned, this tax break that came out of this tax scam that came out of Washington, D.C., cutting the corporate rate from 35% to 21%. We should be able to recapture some of that for the benefit of San Francisco. And one way to do that is to increase the gross receipts tax on corporations that are making more than $25 million a year. It could bring in hundreds of millions of dollars that would just be the money they would otherwise have paid in federal taxes.
I agree with just about everything that Jane and Mark just said, because the amount of sharing and the amount of playing by the rules just isn't happening. But the one thing that we never talk about that's so obvious to me as a coalition builder is that the tech companies, which are exciting, it's exciting that they came to San Francisco. It's great they came to San Francisco. It's too bad we didn't plan for it. And it's really too bad we didn't plan for it, especially in the housing area. But what doesn't exist is the tech companies don't talk to the communities and don't talk to the government. Government, tech companies, and communities have to sit at the same table, the way we did when we did the bill for the chronic homelessness, and come together in agreement. What happened with Uber and Lyft and Chariot and those other types of corporations that literally came to town and skipped over the government by going to your telephone. They literally skipped over governmental rules because they're on your telephone. And so we have to be aggressive with them and make them sit down at the table and ask them to give back to what we, the people of San Francisco, believe they need to give back to, not to what they want to give back to, which is very nice. A lot of them are very big in giving, and we appreciate that, especially the hospitals. But having said that, they need to understand what our need is. They are in a totally different bubble. City Hall's in a different bubble, and you go out into the communities, and they're in a different bubble, and they're all asking for housing, clean streets, helping the homeless get off the streets, and to lower the crime rate. So we need to get these three groups together and create a strong coalition where they understand what to give to, what we need, and how it works for the betterment of all of San Francisco. Thank you.
The first person to answer the next question will be Michelle Bravo, and the question asks, when we discuss policies and vulnerable communities that the federal administration has targeted, what does that mean to you, and what would you do to further protect these communities?
So as a sanctuary city, San Francisco has always felt to me like a very safe place, not just for illegal immigrants, but for everyone. So in terms of protecting these folks, I feel like, well, before I speak too hastily, I feel like there should be more of a look at our budgets at City Hall to see what we can afford to do for these folks, and then if we need help, to ask for help from the state and federal government or whomever we need to protect these folks. I don't think our problem is with illegal immigrants. These folks tend to want to work hard. They really are here for opportunity. We need to find ways to help them become citizens, maybe easier. I don't know that specific answer of what that would be. I'm still new here in terms of all the governments. But I do know that these folks, whenever I have met them, and certainly I have some wealthy clients of my own who definitely have these folks working for them in various capacities. These folks have heart. These folks work hard. They want to be here. They really do. And they're not here to hurt anyone, in my opinion. We have that rare instance with this other gentleman with the Kate Stein. I think it was a lot of political posturing that was going on, and there was a lot of misunderstanding. And I feel that was also a rare piece that happened in our city. Going forward, in terms of, illegal immigration, I think it's important they have a safe place to be, because again, they do want to be here. So let's find a way to keep them here, but let's also find a way to keep them legally here. Thank you.
I have been a strong supporter of Sanctuary City, and I want to thank Angela Aliotto for being the author of that. And in order to make sure that Sanctuary City is a true policy, we need to invest in resources to make sure that our immigrant community has the resources that they need here in San Francisco, whether it is right to counsel, immigrant organizations that can provide culturally competent and language accessible services, and also make sure that we have a hotline available for immigrants who are currently living in fear. This issue is personal for me. While I was fortunate to be one of the members of my families that was born in this country, many members of my family came to this country undocumented, and we didn't even know that until my cousins applied for or wanted to apply for a driver's license or apply for financial aid to go to college. And so I understand how important it is for us to make sure that we are supporting our immigrant communities who are contributing to our economic activity and are part of the fabric of the city. But we can't just fight for Sanctuary City. We need to make sure that we're an affordable city. For Sanctuary City to actually mean something, it's great to have the most progressive policies and services in the country, but if people can't afford to live in San Francisco, they're not going to be able to benefit from the great progressive policies that we're passing here in San Francisco. So we need to preserve rent control housing. We need to continue our small site acquisition to take rent control buildings off the speculative market. And we need to build more affordable and middle income housing so that people who want to be in San Francisco as a sanctuary city can afford to be here. Finally, as we talk about criminal activity, we need to address it not just of undocumented and immigrants, but of all of our citizens. Any of our policies that address criminal justice and public safety should be one that addresses everybody. We need stronger gun control laws in this country so that nobody can commit violence on our streets. I want to apologize. I still have a job as a supervisor, and I have an HOA meeting in the Tenderloin that I must attend that we committed to back in December at 8 p.m. I tried to stay as long as I could, but I do hope that folks will continue to look at my track record, and that will be the one that I will continue as mayor of San Francisco. Thank you very much.
Sanctuary cities were once known as cities of refuge, where refugees and immigrants could come and find safety and care and protection and services. San Francisco is a proud sanctuary city, and now the state of California is a proud sanctuary state. And you may have seen that the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, just declared war on California yesterday. And I'm so proud of my former colleague, President Pro Tem of the Senate, Kevin DeLeon, who is the author of the California Sanctuary State Law, who said to Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions, "Bring it on. We are ready to fight." And Libby Schaaf, mayor of Oakland, just last week gave a heads up to her citizens, her residents of Oakland, that the federal government through ICE was coming for them. She showed what a hero she was. But as we all stand in support of sanctuary cities, we should realize that our undocumented community lives day to day at great risk, not just of ICE, but of their own daily needs, such as housing. There's a lot of discrimination in San Francisco against those who are without documentation, who live in fear, and also may be denied housing because of their status. So there's a lot more that we can do, not only to make San Francisco more affordable, which is why I authored the inclusionary zoning ordinance back in 2000 to make sure that a percentage of all new market rate housing is below market rate housing, and we've built upwards of 5,000 affordable units as a result of that since then. But let's focus on those who are at risk of ICE detainments, provide them with the legal assistance that they need, because if you are undocumented and in a deportation hearing, if you are without legal representation, you are 7 times more likely to be deported. So a lot of work yet to do to protect the families and residents of San Francisco.
Thank you. So make no mistake, people are being deported every day right here in our own backyard. It isn't like because we're a sanctuary city, people are not being taken away. That just is not what's happening. When I wrote the sanctuary law in 1990, it started in '89. It was because there's a Club Elegante in the Mission District where there were about 300 or 400 people dancing the night away. And INS at the time, is now ICE, went in and literally arrested all of the people they believed to be illegal and put them on an airplane the next morning. So I was on the Board of Supervisors, got a call and said, you have to come down to the Mission. I went down to the Mission and you would not have believed the scene where all these children were sitting on their front steps asking where their mom and dad was. It was absolutely shocking. And I hadn't been elected that long. So I called for a hearing on Club Elegante. And those hearings went on for 6 months and resulted in the concept that the San Francisco Police Department will not contact INS and tell them or give them any information that has to do with a person's immigration status. Not at all. They won't have any help one way or the other way. The federal government can't ask the SFPD. SFPD can't ask the federal government, such that the people that were dancing the night away would have a sanctuary. A sanctuary. Churches are sanctuaries. Sanctuaries are places of peace. Peace. And boy, that's a word we don't use anymore. And it's stunning. Peace. They're a place where people can know they're going to go home after they have a nice night out and be with their children and live in peace, because they, generally speaking, at the time came from countries where either there was war or the devastation and the famine and the poverty was so intense that they were starving. So they came to the new America. My grandfather, Alioto, jumped off of he was a stowaway on a ship in the Hudson River from Sicily at 11 years old, jumped into the water, got on a train, just about everything he did, Trump would consider to be illegal. And by the way, I'm not sure Trump has done anything good.
Thank you.
It's great to hear that story. My great-grandparents came here and immigrated to the United States, and to tell you the truth, I don't know if they had documents or not, but they came from Hungary, and I'm glad they did, because they came for survival, because as Jewish people, they would have potentially been exterminated in Nazi Germany, right? And so they came to the United States, and then here I am, generations later, the first generation of my family to be able to go to college. And then here I am trying to shape one of the most amazing cities in the country. And so this is truly the American dream for me, to be part of this process. I want to tell you a story, a tragic story that just happened in San Francisco. A young resident who immigrated here, I don't know the details, got caught up in some bad things. And he got a gun, and his friends had a gun. And just the other night, 2 nights ago, they actually used that gun to intimidate people in a robbery that was in the Mission. And then, unfortunately, what ended up happening was the police came, which is a good thing because they had a gun. But this young man was in the trunk of the car, and he had told his friends beforehand, I don't want to get deported, I don't want to get deported. And so he was in the trunk of the car, and when the police came, I think it might have been in his mind that he was screwed either way. Because if he ended up coming out of that trunk, he would have been deported, and he was terrified of that. And so even though the police said in Spanish and in English, please put down your gun, please show us your hands, there was, I saw the footage myself with my own eyes, there was a shot, he came out from the trunk, and then the police shot and killed him. But I'm saying that we need to help heal that in our neighborhoods right now, so people don't get on that wrong path and get caught up in guns, that people have the ability to have support and community right now. And that's part of my plan, to stabilize our communities and neighborhoods in crisis. But I think that he took that drastic step because of this fear of deportation. And I want people to feel safe in San Francisco, that we're not going to tear families apart, and that we're going to work together.
Thank you. Okay, the next set of questions, we don't want a long answer. We just want a yes or a no. We want to have you on the record, your opinion on specific topics and issues. So please, we'll go from right to left, from the viewer's perspective, left to right from here, and just say yes or no and move on to the next person. We'll start with Mark Leno and move down. Did you support the creation of the public advocate position?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
And do.
Yes.
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 Do you support the taser ballot measure?
Yes.
Never.
No, I do not.
Alvaro said yes. Amy?
No. I absolutely oppose the taser ballot measure.
Given that the Police Officers Association financially donated to President Trump when he was a candidate running for office, if endorsed by them, would you denounce their endorsement?
No. The question is, would I accept their endorsement?
Yes. Now, would you denounce their endorsement?
Would I denounce their endorsement? Similar to the way they have denounced me.
Not yes or no, but
No.
say yes. Amy?
Oh, they wouldn't endorse me.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, given that the Police Officers Association financially donated to President Trump, if endorsed by them, would you denounce their endorsement?
I would at this time, yes.
Okay. Next question. We go please from Mark Leno all the way down the table. Do you support police reform?
Yes, all 271 that the Department of Justice has suggested
We'll
we
leave it at yes.
accept.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarado?
Yes.
I do, except for tasers.
Did you support the Twitter tax break?
Did I? No, because it didn't have a community benefits package that was
We'll leave it at no.
Okay, no.
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 It's commonly referred to as the Manhattanization of San Francisco. Do you support Senate Bill 827 as it is currently written?
No.
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 Absolutely not.
Did you support the anti-speculation tax?
Yes.
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 Do you support equal distribution of navigation centers for homeless in every supervisorial district?
Without a doubt.
Could you say that again?
Do you support equal distribution of navigation centers for homeless in every supervisorial district?
That assumes a fact, not an evidence, which is that I support navigational centers.
Okay.
So it's hard to answer, and I would support facilities in every part of the city, of course, but navigational centers are a dead end for the homeless.
Okay.
All 11 districts have unsheltered people, so yes.
At this time, this is what we have, so yes.
Will you commit to labor peace and fair organizing?
Yes.
Anyone that says no to that should be run out of town. Yes.
Well, Richie Greenberg might.
Okay. Do you believe the mayor should have full appointment authority of the SFMTA Board of Directors?
No.
Yes.
I would totally transform the appointment system, so it would be a community process.
No.
Have you signed onto the pledge to publicly denounce, renounce, and reject independent expenditures?
Given that I wrote it, yes.
Yes.
I didn't sign it, but I'm new to this game, so I would say yes.
And last one, would you accept the endorsement of Ron Conway?
Ooh, that's not an endorsement I have to worry about.
That's the tally.
No, but that assumes you know him. I don't know. You have to know him to accept his endorsement. I've met him once.
Yes or no?
No, would I accept? I'm a Democrat, and I'm a little worried about some of these questions being so final. I'm a Democrat, okay? I don't know what Ron Conway is. As I said, I don't know him.
But we all know what he has done for different candidates, so we would like just a yes or no answer. For the record,
Would I
we won't be
accept an endorsement of Ron Conway?
millions,
You know,
in other words.
Again, I'm
At
a
a price.
millions and billions, like our city budget. No, I probably wouldn't, but I want to say that's not democratic.
We'll leave it at yes, no.
I would accept a lunch date with Ron Conway, and I want to remind you that Francis of Assisi went to speak with the Sultan of Egypt to actually repair and try to stop the Crusades, and created one of the first interfaith movements in the world. And so I think that if we could do that, I could talk with Ron Conway and maybe excite him about making San Francisco an epicenter of equity. Call me, Ron.
I agree. I'd love to meet him. Next mayoral forum, let's invite him, shall we?
I think so. Okay, so now we're going to, my whole plan with having 6 candidates and rolling the dice for fairness went out the door a while back. So we're gonna have Mark Leno answer first this time. It's a short answer, just 1 minute. We're gonna time it again. So this is 1 minute each. And the question says, what do you think about the Airbnb legislation? What was your position on the campus amendments to limit the number of days that a property could be rented?
I was in full support of Supervisor Campos's very thoughtful and effective amendments, which would have put limits on the number of days that a host could rent, specifically if that host was absent, and as well required that Airbnb collect the transient occupancy tax that all of us pay when we stay in a San Francisco hotel, only fair, and then additionally that the platform only allow those hosts who are registered to be on that platform. It was very thoughtful legislation, Supervisor, and we thank you for it.
I agree with everything that Mark just said and with the thoughtful legislation of Supervisor Campos, because it's really very important not to be taking up the units that otherwise would be available and affordable to San Franciscans that want to live here, actually live here as opposed to visit.
And yeah, in 2015, with Neighbors Developing Divisadero, we supported David Campos's thoughtful legislation. And since London isn't here, I'll just let you know that she actually didn't support it and voted against it. In 2015, Jane Kim supported it. I pay a lot of attention to these things, so I can know these answers. And then we have to know that after that passed, but London did support in 2016 the re-proposed amendments that Campos and Peskin put forward. So that's good. It took a year, but she came around. And then Airbnb actually had the audacity to sue our city. And they kept 4,000 units off of the market, the rental market, by having them be short-term rentals. And so that isn't a good neighbor to me, Airbnb. You're gonna have to do a lot to make it up to me.
Thank you. So I did support David Campos's. Thank you. Bill, and this man is a heart in San Francisco, and a heart that I sorely miss having around. And I hope you come back soon, sir, and get back and get involved again. Very soon. That's all I have to say.
He's here.
I know. Thank you.
And the last question says, and Ms. Albiero will have the first answer. Today is International Women's Day, with the national spotlight on the Me Too movement. What policies would you push against sexual harassment and sexual assault?
What would I push?
What policies?
Well, I'm a discrimination trial lawyer, and I have been fighting this for the last 20 years in the courtrooms throughout all of America. Is this our last opportunity to speak?
No.
Okay.
Which is the last question, then you have closing remarks.
I want to make sure. So I've been fighting this all over the United States of America, and the Me Too movement doesn't surprise me at all. What surprises me about it is how limited it is, in the sense that if every woman were to speak up, I think you'd have 80% of the women out there speaking up. It is not an easy thing to say. I have clients come in and they don't want to tell me, and I pull it out of them and I find out exactly what happened to them, and we end up with a verdict from a jury because it's a very understood thing by juries. But it isn't an easy thing to stand up and say. It's not easy at all to stand up and say, I'm black and they've been discriminating against me. That's very tough to stand up and say, I'm a woman and the guy touches my fanny all the time, or the guy pushes me up against the wall, or that people don't, in the workplace, want other people to know that kind of stuff. So all of the women that stand up all the women that stand up that I've met through my law firm and everywhere else in this nation have a lot of guts to do what they do, but it's the only way we're going to end it for our daughters and our granddaughters. And by the way, I don't think there should be a Women's Day. I think it's all time is for women.
Thank you.
So as mayor, I will lead the city in a collaborative and joyful effort to really create a new code of conduct, because we need to reshape the norms of society. And why not start with San Francisco as an epicenter for shaping those norms? Because people should be able to be attracted to one another, but people do not want unwanted sexualization and objectification in any kind of situation. So there's a way that we can do this, and we can actually create these new norms together of what if it was that when you were going down the street and someone was attracted to you, they paid you a nice compliment, like, you really brighten up my day. And then if the person looks at them and smiles, maybe you get to go to the second level and say, I'm interested in you. And if that person says, I'm not interested, then everyone smiles and goes along their way. I think that we actually need, I'm an educator and a developer of ways for people to communicate with one another. And so we actually need to create these new norms so people don't feel afraid, but there's a way that we can do this together where everybody feels good about being able to be attracted and attractive to each other.
Thank you. I'm with Amy in that I believe that we need to further educate people in what sexual harassment even is. With so many different cultures around the world, I think people, some cultures are more touchy than others, and we have a multicultural, country. I feel like if we educate people, there's going to be a lot less anger, a lot less sorrow in the case of, hey, we're all people, misunderstandings occur every day. Let's educate folks, and maybe even, I think New York is recently, I read an article recently, New York is actually putting in some kind of legislation, or they're trying to get legislation for, is it 15 or more employees, small businesses, what have you, would have a poster, like in my office. I'm a holistic health practitioner and massage therapist, where it's human trafficking. It would be the same. Sexual harassment, what it looks like, and who you need to call if this is really the case, and here are the bullet points of what that means. We need to educate people so they understand, so these misunderstandings can stop.
Thank you.
So let me sincerely thank all of the folks who have engaged in the Me Too movement, the very brave individuals who have stepped forward to speak truth to power, and to shine a light on the fact that sexual abuse, harassment, and assault is not about sex. It's about an abusive use of power and an imbalance of power in the workplace in particular. And we need to further take steps to help young men and boys be informed of what is proper behavior and what is not. There's a national organization based here in San Francisco called Futures Without Violence. And I've been pleased to work with them and add my name to a long list of men who have put their names in advertisements, full-page ads in newspapers around the country, and raise money so that we can do just that. Help young men and boys realize that this is violence.
Thank you.
We'll have 1 minute for closing remarks. I'm going to go back to
Since
guys.
we are the last ones that actually remained here, can we get an extra minute to distribute amongst us?
That's fine with me. 2 minutes. So we'll time 2 minutes for closing remarks. Now, I will roll the dice. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. If 5 and 6 come up, we'll roll again. Whoever gets whichever number comes up, that person has the first word for the final remarks, and we'll move down the table. Number 4. So Michelle Bravo has the first closing remark. 2 minutes.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for your patience. We had a delay in getting started, so thank you so much. I want to thank my husband for coming with me and supporting me. His name is Ray. He's in the back there. Thank you so much, Ray. And I just really want to say I've learned learned so much and continue to learn so much in this process. This is a great country we live in. Don't ever forget that. And if I, as a holistic, if I can run as a holistic health practitioner for mayor, please, I hope I can be at least a small inspiration on some level for any of you to also get involved in office. We need good hearts, we need good heads, we need a combination of both, especially in our wonderful San Francisco. Thank you again for attending.
So, as I was saying before, it's great to be able to talk about these platitudes about change and how things will feel different or they will look different when we become mayor. But it's imperative that we actually create measurable outcomes, and that we, with the DCCC, it'd be great if you helped lead this process. I've personally filled out almost 20 different endorsement questionnaires, and people have ideas across the city about what we should be tracking measurable progress on. So please, if you go to weissformayor.com, at the very top, I have developed an online outcomes tracker that has 12 different categories and measurable outcomes that we can make sure that whoever becomes our next mayor, we're giving them a trial run and seeing if they actually pass and get a passing grade for what they've done, or else we don't even consider electing them again in November 2019. Do you like that idea? And this is a participatory process. And so what I have currently on my website, it's 40 different outcomes in 12 categories, but this is something that we can shape together. And so it's important, though, that people say, well, is Amy qualified to lead the city? Because I actually like most everything that she says, but I'm not sure if she's qualified. So I just want to tell you, I'm 41 years old. I've spent the last 20 years of my life dedicated to service to individual, collective, and organizational well-being in direct service work in a variety of fields. So I actually have experience working in a psychiatric hospital, in mental health, in transitional housing, in a shelter for women. I have experience doing leadership and development and education. I have experience in sustainability work and actually in medicinal cannabis as well. I have experience in neighborhood development and community organizing. I am actually the most qualified person to lead the city because I'm not going to do it as an island. I'm a bridge. And so I will work together with people, and I would love to turn to David Campos and many other people to be able to be part of this process as well. So thank you. Vote 1, 2, 3 for equity, San Francisco.
Thank you. I wanted to go back for a second to this 2 seconds on the police reform where I said yes. You know, I'm not going to say yes to 261 reforms. I haven't read each and every one of them. I come from a background. My father was Mayor Joseph Aliero. When Dad was mayor, we had the SLA, we had the Zebra, we had Patty Hearst kidnapped, we had Sin Q, we had the candy bombers who blew up our house, we had the San Quentin 7, we had the candy bombers who blew up our cars. I came from 8 years of some serious terrorism in my front yard, okay? The San Francisco police officers at the time were people we loved, cherished, trusted, who guarded us and took care of us. So I am and always have been a pro-police officer person. But let me just say, when there are bad apples, I sue them. When there are bad apples and the department doesn't get rid of them, the department needs to get rid of them, okay? You don't stand by people that do something wrong. But the majority of our police officers really are there to protect and to preserve and to save people. At least that's how I feel. It's coming from someone of a serious terrorist background. When I see an officer, I don't get scared. Of course, if I'm speeding, I do. But other than that, you know, if I'm speeding, I'll yell at the officer, you know, and I'll defend myself. But my point is, I don't want to say yes to 261 reforms that I personally haven't read. I have read the 14 that they did adopt, but so I want to undo that because it would bother me to say yes to something as a trial lawyer that I don't know by heart. I'm a very thorough person. So again, by the way, I wrote the medicinal marijuana law. I wrote it the year after my husband husband died of cancer, and my 4 children and I sat by the side of his bed and watched him in pain because UCSF took that medicinal marijuana away from him, and he could no longer come to the dinner table. So I went about the business of writing that legislation, taking the criticism, taking the heat, and now having it be something that actually gives people who are dying and in pain a feeling of living a good life. I want all San Franciscans to live it.
Just as a point of clarification, the earlier question was, do you support police reform, not a specific document, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
we actually discussed that when we were coming up with the questions. We mentioned that it would be difficult to say yes or no to. We are aware of that. Thanks for the clarification. Mr. Leno, you have your closing remarks, 2 minutes.
When the rich and powerful voices have greater access to the policymakers at City Hall than you, their needs are addressed rather than yours. And that's why I'm so adamant that we make sure that unregulated and unlimited contributions are kept out of influencing the outcome of this meeting. When I talk about shaking things up at City Hall, I mean a lot of different things, but I also want to get to the nuts and bolts of how business is done at City Hall. For example, commissioners who sit on a variety of commissions who make decisions that impact our lives on a regular basis are done as a result of political patronage rather than through representation of your neighbors and you. We've got a problem. And so I would have a committee put together representing all the neighborhoods of San Francisco to make recommendations to me as mayor as to who should sit on these commissions and get rid of the political patronage. And by the way, people with expertise in the field that they're going to be working in on those commissions. You know, for the past 30 years, both as an activist and as an office holder, public servant, I have stood up for those without a voice. Whether we're talking about foster children or prisoners in solitary confinement, those tenants who are at risk of eviction, or those who are at risk of discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations. And as mayor, I will continue to stand up for those without a voice. And I will stand up to Donald Trump and his hateful agenda against immigrants and refugees and women and our ethnic communities, Jews and Muslims, and the LGBT community. I ask for your support. Join me if you're looking for a new direction at City Hall. Thank you for being here.
With that, I want to thank the San Francisco Democratic Party for organizing this debate, the LGBTQ Center of San Francisco for hosting, the candidates for staying and participating on tonight's forum, of course you, the voters, for coming out tonight. And if you want to live in a democracy, vote. Gracias, buenas noches.
Thank you, everyone. If we can give a big round of applause to all the candidates that participated in the forum. Thank you so much. And if we could also thank Maria Leticia Gomez for being our moderator. Thank you so much. And just a couple of final points. I do want to acknowledge members of the Democratic County Central Committee who are here. Pratima Gupta, Pedro de Jesus, Sia Lacroix, Keith Baraka, Sophie Maxwell, Francis Shea, our Executive Director, Peter Galana, our Executive Director, Adam Hayes, Kelly Brock. By the way, our endorsement meeting will be March 28th, so make sure you come to the Women's Building.
Well, nice meeting you again.
I already said, Sophie. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.